Hey, this is Russell, and today we're going to be looking at what is better, solar panels or windmills in general. And we'll be doing a number of different tests, and we're going to be using this save file in order to do those tests. We have a company with around four something $1 million that we will be messing around with, and just buying some solar panels, windmills, and stuff like that, doing some baseline tests and seeing what amount of money we make over the course of time. And we'll discuss all the findings at the end of the video, the thought processes behind the different tests and things like that. Um, so basically what we're doing is with every single major test or calculation, we're going to be assuming that we are investing $3 million every time into um, windmills and solar panels. And that's how I'm going to be sort of doing all my calculations off of. So each solar panel costs $30,000 and each windmill costs $1 million. So the equivalent of 100 solar panels should equal the cost of 3 windmills. That's kind of the point at which we're doing all these calculations, in order to make the calculations more simple. We are not going to be calculating in things like maintenance cost, or costs to like run a company or whatever. Um, all of those are not going to be factored in. The only things that we're going to be factoring in, we're not factoring in buildings or anything like that. We're just going to be factoring in the yield for the windmills and solar panels, and we're going to be factoring in the initial cost it took to buy those solar panels and windmills, like comparing the two, and then just comparing it to some other ways of making money by the end of the video, and determining how worthwhile it is to invest into windmills and solar panels. How should it be done? When should it be done? And all of that. So each test that we are doing, we have a few different types of tests, but most of the tests we're doing are over the course of the 10 years, with this time lapse, and then we're going to kind of base our calculations off of how much solar panels will make in 10 years, how much windmills will make in 10 years, and so on and so forth. Um, and yeah, that's how we'll calculate it out. So it is worth noting that solar panels and windmills are a little bit dependent on things like weather and stuff like that. We'll discuss that a little bit more later. Um, but yeah, that's something that needs to be taken into account. But for the most part, we'll be able to determine like a range. Now, as you can see with this graph, we have not made back in the course of 10 years the total amount of money that we spent on the windmills. And that's an important point that we're going to discuss a bit more at the end of the video. But you can see we spent $3 million and we haven't made back that $3 million yet. Again, we'll discuss that at the end of the video. But for now, let's discuss the numbers that we have. So $3 million worth of windmills. Over the course of 10 years, this test in particular yielded 1.95-ish million. Um, and that's excluding any other costs, like the costs for like building like the little hut out there with the batteries or the maintenance man and stuff like that. So yeah. Um, as I was saying before, not every test is consistent. You can see that is like different wind speeds during different months, even though these are for the most part synchronized. Um, they Windmills are spinning at like different speeds and yielding different amounts every month. With like the graph, you can see that very well. So it's worth keeping in mind that we are not going to be working with exact numbers all the time. Instead, we're just going to be working with like ranges, and what is profitable, within like a certain range. But you'll see the numbers by the end of the video, and be able to come up with some pretty solid interpretations, on or guesses, educated guesses on how much you're going to be able to yield. Now, a disclaimer: I am not a mathematician, so these numbers are not going to be perfect. But the estimated yield for 3 windmills over the course of 10 years is going to go anywhere between 1.58, 158, 1,584,000 and 223, 2,223,000 and all of that. So yeah, that's basically what we're going to be working with. With solar panels, Let me repeat that number one more time. 1,584,000 and 2,232,000. That's like the range in which you're always going to get with windmills. It's a very wide range. And it makes things a little less cut and dry in terms of how much like money you're gonna need to make in order to pay everything off. But that's the numbers that we're going to be working off of. So with solar panels, we have 100 solar panels here, and that's the equivalent of 3 windmills in terms of cost. Of course, I had to build a basement building underneath these solar panels, and so that costed more. Um, but I'm not factoring that in because maybe you have a way of integrating, solar panels into like your existing building, and you don't have to really build like a separate building for it, or so on and so forth. So we're just working with yields and maintenance costs, yields and not maintenance costs. We're not even factoring that in because you may have maintenance workers already. We're just working in yields and and the cost to build the initial thing. So as you can see, the solar panels are producing during the day and then dropping off at night. And it's like a continuous cycle, while the windmills would stay at like a certain amount of production over the course of the whole day. It fluctuates in the middle of the day and goes away at night, which makes sense for solar panels. You can also tell whenever like rainy days come by that it produces little to nothing on those days. And it is worth noting as well that because each solar panel totals to, I think it's like 3 kilowatts, the maximum amount you can make from 100 solar panels is higher than the maximum amount you can make from 3 windmills, just because the windmills cap out at 90, well, 3 times 100 equals like 300, so 270 and 300 is like the maximum amount windmills and solar panels can make. So here you can kind of tell from the chart that you haven't quite made the halfway point. It's kind of seemed like you made the halfway point on the windmills, and you see you haven't really made that on the solar panels. And we'll get into the numbers for that in particular, but it's worth noting that yeah, it doesn't seem as strong as the windmills, at least in this test. In this test in particular, we had $3 million worth of solar panels, and over the course of 10 years, it yielded 1.6 million, which is like 3 billion less, 300,000 less. Now, over the course of 10 years, it ranged from 1.47 million to 1.68 million. Now, this is a lot less, but I asked myself, what if we then put the solar panels in a place that doesn't snow or rain, for that matter, as much? So, yeah, I put it in the desert to see just what would happen. I wasn't sure about doing this at first, but the thought occurred to me when watching it in the temperate biome and seeing it snow. I was thinking, yeah, the desert biome doesn't snow, so does that mean I'm gonna produce like in the months that it doesn't snow a bit more? It just makes sense. If there's less snow, it's gonna produce more. What I didn't expect is that in general, on average, all of the days it was producing more. Like I thought it was just gonna produce more like from the on the basis that it just didn't snow. It didn't have like winter months, so that it would produce the same amount in like the winter months that it would in like all the rest of the months of the year. What I didn't count on is that the sun just seems to be stronger in the desert in game. Like that's like a fact in game coded into the game. This is true because of course I did multiple tests on all of these things, and yeah, it's in general, you just yield a lot more in the desert, like on a day to day basis, which brought some other thoughts to mind as well, and we'll get to those in a bit. But yeah, this is a pretty big deal. Pretty big discovery to sort of stumble upon, just because um it changes the way you need to think about where you plan your office, because it no longer means that temperate or winter biome or desert biome are on the meaningless side. I kind of had that impression from, just playing the game. It's like, oh, I have to pay for electric more, and like the for heaters in this place, and I have to pay for electric more for AC in this place, or so on and so forth. And that just didn't seem like it was like much of a factor. And it kind of seemed like the best reason to go to desert would just be like for the sunny trait or whatever. But there's actually other reasons for using these different biomes. It's kind of shown by this. As you can see, the chart on the solar and the temperate was like lower than halfway through. And this one is higher than halfway through. So you can already see like a visible difference, and you can see that the line is more consistent. There's less bumps in it because it's not like dropping during like winter months like it was on like the other one. So yeah, the numbers just seem way better, and they are better. At least in this case, over the course of 10 years, we saw a yield of 2.4 million with these, which is way higher. It's almost a million higher. The estimated total, I would estimate between 2.295 million and 2.488 million, which is humongous, a huge difference. Now, that brings up another question, afterwards. Are windmills the same in every biome? And so what I did is I did like tests, and like of course I was using my tests I already had for like the temperate windmills, but then I just started putting windmills in deserts and windmills in like winter biomes. And this is where things get even more interesting, because the windmills in like the desert biomes were making significantly less than the windmills in like the winter biomes. So that means I also had to test windmills in the winter biomes as well. It almost seemed like I don't think I ran like calculations for it in particular, but it seems like if I was to put like a free windmills in like the desert, it would even make less than the temperate one. And I'm not 100% sure on that fact, but I'm like 90% sure that like the windmills are like the worst place to have windmills in the desert. So of course I went ahead and I did the same windmill test, but this time I did it in a cold biome or frozen biome. And as you can see, consistently, we're producing almost every month 200 plus kilowatts for almost every month. And this is huge. Like you see, like the income 20,000, almost 20,000, 20,000, 20,000. It's a lot of the time it's just going up above like 20,000 with little to no effort. Sometimes even getting close to like 30 or past 30,000. I'm pretty sure a couple times. It just produces so much, and it does it throughout the whole time because it doesn't really drop off at like nighttime either. So, and I was watching this with anticipation too, because when I put the wind solar panels in the first moment in the desert, I thought I struck gold. I thought there was going to be like no way to top it. But as I kept watching these windmills produce more and more and more over the course of these 10 years, I was thinking like, are I was scratching my head. I was like, I wonder if they're actually going to beat the solar panels. And for a while, at least, it seemed a little close. And then as the years went on, you really like start to like notice how much more like skyrocketing the amounts of income being produced by these over the solar panels. Like there's barely any low days. I mean, as I say that, I just saw like 80 kilowatts be produced in one day. But most of the time is like 150, 200, 250, um so on and so forth. Very, very unexpected that like winter biomes would be this powerful. Um Concerning windmills at least, and we'll discuss the pros and cons of all of these different options, of course, pretty near the end of the video. But yeah, 15, 22, Yeah, it was amazing. Just as much as I was like walked away from the computer, I spent most of the time walked away from the computer. But sometimes, like during this test, there were moments where I just sat down and watched it in slow motion. This chart, I think, really shows it. Like you saw, the solar panels were like slightly above the halfway mark. This one, like you can see, like the windmills are pretty much three quarters of the way there at this point, and you can tell that it's actually getting decently close to being able to pay off the initial cost for the windmills, which is pretty amazing. So, with all that in mind, $3 million worth of windmills in the winter biome over the course of 10 years, and this one made 2.673 million. And then when we look at the estimated total over the course of 10 years for three windmills, I'd place that somewhere between 2.49 million and 2.87 million. That's just in all the tests that came out on top pretty much every single time, compared to all of that. But now we're going to look at bonds, because we have to ask ourselves the question, when does using solar power and windmills become worth it? And if you can make more money by just putting it into an account over a period of time rather than like putting the huge investment it takes into windmills and stuff like that, then there isn't really a reason to use windmills and solar panels. So it's an important test. We have to figure out the point at which windmills pay off. And so in this case, I put in the $3 million to bonds, and I got back like around 312,000, and that is roughly a 10.4% increase over 5 years. So if we were to take the 3,312,000 and reinvest it, and then take the earnings from that, and then reinvest it, and then take the earnings from that and reinvest it over the course of 20 years, we're going to end up with 4.456862 million. And in comparison to that, solar panels could earn that amount in 18 to 19 and a half years in a desert, and windmills in a winter biome could earn that within like 15 to 18 or so years. So solar panels and windmills are worth it as a long-term investment, but let's say you're in the last 10 years or so in the game, or 15 or so years in the game, it isn't worth it to invest in windmills and solar panels. At that point, it's better to just put your money in bonds. So let's talk about the pros and cons of uh, every single source of making money via energy. So windmills in winter biomes are the most profitable, hands down. There's no way getting around it. Um, the cons to it though is there is no other benefit to being in the winter biome, and we're going to talk about that later. And individual windmills cost much more to build. It's just way more expensive to spend $1 million up front and much more of an investment than do a piecemeal 30,000 at a time. Also, winter biomes just seem to be really dreary and ugly, and I really am not a big fan of them. Aesthetically, I think out of the three different biomes, it's the least aesthetic piece, and so it is a very very big initial investment to put in. Solar panels, on the other hand, the con, of course, is that it's going to make less money overall if you compare it to windmills. It doesn't make quite as much, but it does cost less for each individual solar panel, so you can do it piecemeal. And you have to keep in mind there's an actual other reason for being in the desert biome, and that's the sunshine trait. You see, all of your people will have traits, and some of them will have the sunshine trait, which means their sunny there improves their mood. Um, and there is no such like beneficial trait to being in a winter biome. So while you will make less overall, your team might be better working in a desert biome, and that's ultimately more important than making money via energy. So it's just something to consider. Unfortunately, for the temperate biome, there is no reason to build solar panels and windmills in this biome, um, which is really sad because this is really the best looking biome of the three, like by far. Um, but at the same time, you're never gonna make that money back nearly as fast. It's better to be doing stuff with like bonds and stuff like that if you or to be like in a city uh, or a town, and focusing on growing your company and stuff like that than investing into solar and windmills when you're in this biome. I wish, while most of it's pretty balanced, the solar panels and windmills, I wish they would add a third source to energy that you could use in a temperate biome that would thrive in a temperate biome, like the windmills thrive in winter biomes and the solar panels thrive in solar in desert biomes. Ultimately, the best time I'd say to build windmills and solar panels and stuff like that, it was going to be within the 1990 to 2010, really. If you want to make sure that you get a full payoff and you aren't making more money via bonds. So yeah, stay tuned because I will have a new series after this one. The previous series I played was a one employee challenge, where I could only have one employee. This time I'm going to do a phone operating system only run, where all I can sell on the market are phone operating systems. So if you're interested in that, feel free to stay tuned. That first episode will be up next week. Bye. Take care.
Like, favorite, and subscribe if you guys want to see more. Always interested in your feedback down in the comment section. You guys have a good one. God bless.